Mr. Black, before we get to you for a second round, Mr. Roberts and then Ms. Cooey would like to respond.
Thank you. I think what's missing in addressing these issues goes foremost with the planning on how this is going to be done. Too often it's specific for a particular wage category, and it needs to be addressed that it can be stimulated across the board. And one of the areas that is too often missed is seniors housing, and the amount of spin-offs that if we can get our seniors into affordable housing that secures their incomes, it allows first-time home buyers to get into these homes that need a little bit of work. It has spin-offs for every field, whether it's home renovations, purchasing new components for the homes. That's what needs to be addressed.
Mona Cooey.
Thank you. I believe that we need to expand on the work that's already being done. In March 2007, there was an affordable housing report that was prepared by the Economic Development Brandon and the Brandon Neighborhoods Renewal Corporation. We need to revisit that report and test it for its relevancy and results today. We must ensure that the community, that we're consulting with all stakeholders and focusing the civic responsibilities on zoning and making sure that children are close to schools, seniors are close to services.
We have two more, Carrie, that indicated they'd like to answer before we stop. Mr. Black and then Mr. Berry.
Well, in Brandon, about 40% of people rent, 60% of people own. A lot of the projects that are underway now are condominiums. They're the development of the North Hill. These are all aimed at families, many of them working families, some seniors. We have the land up at Veterans Way in the works. AECOM and the city have been working on the development of proposals for that land in recent months. They've come up with a nice mix of housing that addresses home ownership for some, rental accommodation for other, accessibilities for people with disabilities, a variety of opportunities for people in relatively low income groups who rent with rent geared to income.
We have a final, Mr. Berry.
Thank you. The affordable housing issue we've heard a lot about in the last little while, and it covers such a wide variety of spectrum of group, from students to seniors to low-income single families. The one thing I've never heard from anybody is what do they consider as affordable housing? Because affordable housing, in my mind, is not somebody that has to pay $1,000 rent a month. That's not affordable housing. Affordable housing has to be for people who can afford to pay the rent and still put food on the table for their kids the next day. And I'm afraid today in Brandon, that is a sad story. People are having a hard time doing that. I don't have the answers to how to build affordable housing, but what I know we need to do is look at it, do it, we can do it, and I don't think you're going to find contractors that are going to do it for charity. They're in the business to make money.
Over to the panel, I'm sorry.
Don Justman.
Don Justman.
Thank you. Thank you. A couple of points. The last one made by Mr. Berry, I agree with it wholeheartedly. What is affordable housing? It's quite different for me and for Jan probably. But what we should be talking about is getting an avenue here where we can get attainable rent. This affordable housing is exactly what they did in the United States, and they're broke. We're on the right track with what we're doing, zoning, subdividing, and selling. And that is the route to go with this land that we have as a hot item right now at Veterans Way and First Street.
Thank you very much.
Len Islipson?
Yeah, I want to go back to the original question. When you asked, is it some type of business that the city should get into? I think if affordable housing, definitely, we need to look at that. We need to look into it a lot deeper than what we're doing. Should the city be involved in owning and running such a thing? I know Saskatoon has a great plan that they're following. We've already talked about the Sportsplex pool that we run that is losing money. We talked about an upcoming thing with the golf course, which is losing money. Do we want to keep going into business? No, we need to work with partnerships out there. Let's do what we can to work with as many groups as we can to make affordable housing available, but I don't think it's the right thing for the city to get involved in actually running the property.
Okay, my question is for the candidates in the Assiniboine ward, Jeff Fawcett and Mike Volek, and it's on, I guess it's on the subject of affordable housing. Many Brandonites feel that homeowners in developments like Monterey Estates are living in tax shelters and that they should pay the same level of taxation as everybody else in the city. How do you feel about that?
I think that they did just do some work on this the last few years, and so I'm not sure who the people are you're speaking of. I guess people that don't live in Monterey Estates.
Okay.
But we have 3 mobile home parks up in, or actually there's 4, and they're all well kept, they're all well run, and actually it is a whole different ballgame. There's a whole lot of literature for us to be reading on that. It's like the taxi bylaws. We've got a whole
Jeff.
bunch of work there.
Please. It was a fairly straightforward question.
I don't think it's a tax shelter.
All right, Jeff, if someone owns a $150,000 RTM at Monterey Estates and they're paying less than someone owning a house assessed at $150,000 on Christie Bay, is that fair?
It depends on appraised value. That's what we're taxed on, Devin. That's the system that we have. So it isn't a tax shelter. They are paying their fair share, if that's what you're asking. Yeah.
Mike, the question that he said was if we had 2 properties with the same appraised value, and one was an RTM in Monterey Estates and another was a home at any other point throughout our community, can you help us understand why one would receive substantially lower, pay lower taxes than another?
What is the specific number that you have to compare? What are the 2 numbers, Devin?
Well, I know the complaint has been that the number's not the same, that the number in developments like that are lower.
Now, there is some other things, too, to take into consideration. And I'm not sitting up here in defense of Monterey Estates, but they do pay a fee every month.
And what would that fee be? That's a condo or a clearing fee, correct?
Yeah.
Which would be then, following that all condo developments throughout the city, therefore, should reduce the property taxes that they have to pay? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, and I'm also thinking they have their snow removal is done privately.
Each of us has an opportunity to have our snow removal done privately. Will we again have an opportunity to reduce that? This is about choice. And when people choose to live in a place like Monterey Estates, for example, and wish to pay to have someone collect that snow, should that, I don't understand why other people should be required to subsidize that.
I'm not sure if you're suggesting that the affordable housing that they're offering them up there is not to your liking or not serving a purpose. I think that it's a good private venture that people are going into, and we will probably look at that further. I do know when Monterey Estates was built, that the trailer parks all got together and they had to do some renegotiating discussion. Maybe it gets revisited. You know, I guess that would have to be presented to council.
Okay, Councillor Black wants to shed some light on this.
Well, we had this discussion, I think, 6 years ago. Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was about 6 years ago. I was in favor of treating, what did you call them?
Tax shelters.
Well,
Monterey Estates, RTMs. RTMs.
The same as stick houses. Most of the owners of trailer parks were similar. They supported it, Brentwood, White Swan, all around. The opposition came from the new kid on the block. The city decided that they would stick with the differential arrangement. That's where we are. We should probably revisit that because we're looking for new sources of revenue. That could potentially be one, or at least we might equalize down as well as up.
Steve Montague, you want to say something?
Councillor Black just touched on it. In Brentwood Trailer Park, it's the reverse happening. There's residents there that wish to be on a tax roll based on assessment because they feel they're paying too much in the lot fee, including that. So they think that their fees actually would be reduced by going on the tax roll because their properties aren't necessarily $150,000 RTMs. They're worth a lot less, but they're paying the same as some of the larger homes in that area.
Okay, I just want to go back to Jeff and Mike. You're running for councillor in the Assiniboine ward, but Councillor Black just explained what the issue is. Don't you feel you should be more familiar with this issue?
I am familiar with the issue, but I do not believe, like, people choose to live where they're going to live for various reasons, and a lot of it has to do with income. So when you take a chance at saying, well, I'm going to change the way it's worked. Well, people base their retirement years on paying this amount over this time. And I think that there probably needs to be more type of communities like that for seniors to be able to live affordably. It's not a tax shelter. I do not believe it needs to be revisited.
Jeff wants to say something.
You know, I do think that I did state that I was familiar with the issue. He just clarified that it was 6 years ago they discussed it. Now, that being said, I've been to all the doors. It hasn't been an issue. It is at your table. It hasn't been at the doors.
Okay.
So, and it was 6 years ago.
Okay, Margot, you wanted to add something?
Well, I just wanted to clarify what Stephen had said. Yes, we had all these discussions several years ago and with the mobile homeowners, and the decision was the result that you see now. There are some, yes, that would like one method if they live in older homes that are assessed at less, but then they are compensated for that. But on the other hand, Brentwood Village is made up of rows and rows of beautiful, big, new, expensive residential units, and they would not benefit from the tax concession, as Stephen said. And it has to be fair for all.
Next
Thank you.
question, Allison.
Thank you very much, Carrie. My next question is actually for Margot Campbell. Margot, in your opening statements, you referenced that in your past term there has been in the range of $8 million in necessary drainage infrastructure that has gone into the Richmond ward. Are you confident now that we have enough infrastructure in place to withstand a storm similar to the one that hit us in 2005? And I will pose this question to both Margot Campbell and Councillor Jesselman, who had flooding severely affect his ward as well.
Well, my heart went out to those poor people in the Richmond ward that had sewer up to their feet or sometimes their knees and water back up in that area. I was over there the next morning trying to do what little I could to reassure them that as a city councillor I would be there for them. And over the past 4 years I have fought for these modifications to the drainage system. We have $2,900,000 of a new pump station, $2,900,000 of a new forced water main.
Margot, are you assured that it will be enough to withstand another flood?
You know what? I'm not God. But as much as I have done, I have seen that could be done. I pray that it's enough. I think that the city engineering department has put in every effort to improve it. There are some streets up there that I want to be around to continue working on because they're not quite as good as I'd like to see.
I'll ask Stephen to respond to that.
When you talk to the residents at the doorsteps there right now, they don't feel it's enough. There's residents that are no longer in the Richmond ward on the corner of Maryland that do not feel that they are safe. The big rainstorm we got this summer, many of them said they were 45 minutes away from going to get pails to bail out their basement. If our residents are living like that now, we haven't done enough to protect them, and we need to do more to make sure that this doesn't happen again, because many of those homeowners are still paying off what happened many years ago, and that's unfair to them.